Thank you, everyone. Glad to see there's so many people here still really fascinated about hearing about BIM. So my name's Ian Fury and this is Jay. We are project engineers working on the Liverpool Lime Street project for Network Rail, and we are responsible for design integration overall for the scheme. So the talk today is about BIM in the sense of what we're using on the project rather than some esoterical description about BIM, and that's how we intend to play it. So some of my previous BIM type experiences I had when I was working with Mark McDonald on Northern Hub, which is on the Heighton Roby scheme. And that was my first sort of exposure to the world of 3D models and things like that. And it was quite good. We used the model for signal sighting, and I think we did what we could with it with the budget we had at the time, what was available. And it was relatively new to me, certainly. My main interest in that was signal sighting. But one of the issues we had with the project was track and civils were using a nice snake grid, survey grid and topo which had been provided for the Transpennine electrification scheme, and the OLE contractor who was part of a separate project delivering electrification was using 2D OS tiles, and therefore although we had a nice model which we could integrate to a point, we then having to take completely different data source using different survey data and try and work those two things out, which wasn't ideal. So I always thought if I got an opportunity to do this sort of thing on another project, that try and remember that fact. One of the sort of main things about the Liverpool Lime Street project is we have managed to start off on the right footing in terms of establishing a single project survey grid and point cloud, and then building up from there, which everyone's working in, which I'll come on to in a bit. So in terms of the running order, I'm going to talk a bit about BIM, how we're using it and where we are, an overview of the scheme just so people can be familiar with Lime Street as a project, what a federated model means, some talk about recent design integration that we've done on the project, commissioning some works at Christmas, and a couple of example cases of how we're using it, and then also discuss some next steps as well, where we intend to try and take it as we move forward, and then obviously some Q&A. So many people, I don't know how many people have seen this. It's just the typical BIM type diagram. Yeah, it's since 2007. I might have seen newer ones, but essentially, we're somewhere, I don't know, we're using CAD, we're certainly using 3D and models, and we're using project-wise as a data source. So we're somewhere in, based purely on that diagram, we're somewhere in that level 2E bit, somewhere there or thereabouts, maybe just inching into it. We're certainly not up towards the higher end. And the other thing is we're not actually specifically remitted or funded. No one set as a particular BIM target as a scheme, other than what the government may like and said, you will do this and you will hand over this at the end. We're simply trying to use what's available to us out there and use it the best way possible to make our lives easier and help us with delivering and with designing the project. So that's kind of where we are with BIM, and I would say using project-wise as a tool, some people may not like it or may like it, but it is kind of fundamental to with us all working in MicroStation, and it allows everybody to work in that same model survey grid space, and it fairly easily. So that's a key point about it. We've also got point cloud survey. There's also an element of virtual reality, and that is used both in our main engineering BIM model, but it's also used separately as well for other purposes. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. We're using BIM in a sense for hard engineering activities, design integration, trying to solve engineering issues. Public relations, which is some of where the VR stuff comes in, is actually, although it might not have a genuine practical, as you would see, engineering sense, actually it's really useful from a communications perspective when you're trying to sort of demonstrate to stakeholders why are we doing the works, what are we doing. It's surprisingly useful actually how many people get engaged just by something really visual, and that's, I would also say it helps up the tree as well. I think if we hadn't set off, if the project hadn't set off back before I started on it with the view that it was going to go out and build itself a virtual world, I don't think we would have necessarily got where we were. It has been used extensively to flog the scheme and show people what it's all about and engage a bit of public imagination. And we also intend to, although we're not quite there yet, use this stuff for some real-world planning as well, which we'll come on to in a little bit. Okay, so overview. So it's a multidisciplinary scheme. So it's almost a full track renewal of Liverpool Lime Street and S&C remodelling. And it's not like for like, although that's originally how it was, I think, funded, if you like, from a track RAM perspective. It's completely remodelled for independent tamping, so it's modern S&C. The layout that they've got today is very archaic and non-compliant, and you would never be able to renew it in its current form anyway. And that was kind of recognised, I think, early on when they were originally looking for funding and how they were going to do the project. Signaling's funded for a full signalling renewal. It hasn't seen a signalling renewal for 50 years. In fact, it hasn't seen much of anything for about 50 years in terms of investment. That was kind of maybe the last time they really went in the electrification era. They've done things since then, but nothing on any major scale. And in support of all of that, brand new signalling system, EMP, telecoms works, SCADA for OLE switching, essentially, and quite extensive platform works. I've not even mentioned, I've mentioned OLE. OLE is just a consequence of essentially the track remodelling. It's not, we've managed to squeeze some money out of them, but it was never down, and it hasn't been down to completely renew the OLE, which means we're actually working to a sort of a strange variant of OLE, Mark 3D, or something that's used in King's Cross, and that happens to work with the current Lime Street arrangement, fixed tension. Now, I did say, Jay, that I wasn't going to do too much with the model in case it falls over. We have if anyone's worked with Bentley Railtrack and MicroStation and done lots of things with it when you're doing your actual work, it can be a bit flaky. So we've got a safe presentation which has got lots of pictures on PowerPoint slides, and we will also try and be a bit interactive with the model as well. And if it falls over, we can fall back onto the safe thing. You need to do it, yeah. I was just testing.
Just getting it ready.
So on that slide, you can see Lime Street station area as it is today. On the right-hand side, if anyone's familiar with it, you've got a set of buildings down the middle, which is the lounges, customer lounges, first-class lounge. There's an old building at the top, to the bridge, shown as a bit of a block, which is the old GPO building. which actually has a tunnel shaft in it and a tunnel under the road to the old Royal Mail offices, so machinery to bring stuff in when they would have originally loaded stuff onto trains, which they don't do anymore, so redundant. And then on the left-hand side, which is generally where the local services stop, you can see there's sidings in the middle of the platforms, which are kind of no longer really used today. So if we go on to, you can go in the model now if we want, yeah. Go, let's see, it won't fall over. Okay. So from this view, we don't move anywhere. That's looking at, if you can recall from the previous screenshot, there was previously platform, or it was called the cab road, with all the offices and station furniture and stuff on it, and Virgin first class lounge, etc. All of that's going to be excavated out to create what is essentially new platform 7 and 8. So right through the bridge and all the way up to the buffer stops to provide some additional platforms. That's going to be something in the order of about 12,000 tonnes of sandstone. So it's quite a reasonable amount for us to be excavating. And in the name of sustainability, the plan is still, once we've got the GPO building down and ripped all the machinery out, is use the horizons to crush them and drop into the void. That's so we've got a bit of a, and also to use them in the build the new platforms if we can, as long as the material is suitable, and try and keep as much of it on site. As things currently stand, we have done some works at Christmas where we've actually when we've now started stripping out the GPO building. So, and as soon as we get rid of the buildings that are in the middle of this particular area here, we'll be starting our excavation works, and we need to have by Christmas basically all that track in, and one of the roads, as Mr. Ellis actually commissioned and into use, albeit not working on the new signalling system. It'll still be working on the existing signalling. So you know, that's kind of probably the most major piece of works in the station. On the other side of the station, what we're actually doing is getting rid of the old sidings that run through the middle because they're not used anymore, and we're making it wider. We're making some platforms longer, and the idea is, you know, it should be sort of fit for modern rolling stock essentially. A lot of the facilities that are there, that's good. A lot of the facilities that are there today in terms of shunting and sidings were there when for a 1950s railway, when they had coaching stock and engines, and they're just not used today and not needed. So although originally the scheme itself has just been evolved from track and signalling renewals funding, it's actually when they started looking at it and they started modelling the capacity issues and tying it into Northern Hub, they discovered that I wouldn't say they 100% need it, but that the provision of this remodelling scheme at Lime Street, extra capacity, and also the 4th track at Heighton, which I hope is going in at October, that massively de-risks the sort of aspirational Northern Hub timetable services. So it's now been given a DFT regulatory milestone that we actually complete these works and commission it before December 2018. So in this area, I think, where are we driving to now, Jay?
On our way to Lime Street.
Are we on our way to Lime Street? Are we just coming across the new Crown Street junction?
At 110 mile an hour.
110 mile an hour. It's not 110 mile an hour. It's only 30 mile an hour. 105, okay. So in terms of track, because I know there are track people here who may have some vague interest in the remodelling, essentially what we've done is, in many ways, just taken the existing layout and actually stretched it. We've taken out, there's an existing shunt neck in the middle of the throat, which we'll come to in a bit, which is no longer used. But by and large, that's essentially what's happened. So the fast to slow ladder, which currently wends its way across the slow to fast ladder, etc., is actually moved further back towards Edge Hill, and that frees up space for the other S&C to be spaced out more evenly and give us a much more maintainable system of track. So more mechanised maintenance, independent tamping and that sort of thing. So are we coming into the station now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are. So this currently, if we stop and turn around, if we can, yeah. Yeah, so you can see there today, there's 4 tracks there actually in that section at the moment. I think there's 5. I think it's correct where the shunt neck runs up the middle. So it's quite, I'm not quite sure how they managed to fit it in, but they do. It's quite congested, so all of that goes. And that's kind of an overview of track, if you like, and some of the works on the project. So if we want to just drop into actually no, that's fine, I'll just talk. Okay, I'm all right, so I don't need, it's no point, no one wants to look at, they like looking at that sort of stuff anyway. So that's a bit of an overview of the scheme. So if I wind it back to, oh, well, I've been there before a little bit, and I can see where we weren't able to use the sort of BIM processes effectively because not everyone was on the same hymn sheet, etc. The key thing is, well, certainly as we moved into Grit 5 to 8, we wanted to make sure that we contracted the requirements to everybody. Yeah, so not we've written engineering processes and procedures essentially to support, you know, 02009 and IDC and design integration, but we've written it specifically around the version of ProjectWise that we've got, which is a bit simpler and more stupid than the Northern Hub one, and we've been quite prescriptive about the requirements on all the contractors and what they have to design to and what they have to comply with, simply to make sure we do get everyone actually joining the party, really, because it does sometimes happen if people, obviously if people aren't quite contracted to do what you want them to do, they might not necessarily do it. So the other thing we have been doing with the model as well. We missed a bit. Oh, thanks, Matt. I'm glad I've got you with me. It did. Okay. Can you fly that? Okay. We're on federated model. Brilliant. Okay. Yeah. So, what federated model? What does that actually mean? Well, it kind of means that it's shared. So you haven't got, you know, some monolithic thing that's looked after by only one entity. The idea is you've got technology, you've got tools that allow everyone to collaborate in the same survey grid space, if you like, same real world space. So it's federated because as long as everyone complies with the rules about how they design for the project, when whatever they design, as long as they comply with those rules, whenever you want to build up a model or you want to reference in various different designs for whatever reason, it works. Everything appears in the space it's supposed to appear. And that's kind of part of the concept of the model being federated. So we've got a hub and spoke project. Network Rail is sitting in the middle as the hub, and the DPE is responsible for design integration. So we've got additional resources to help with that. And although each CEM is responsible for his own business's design integration, we then have to make sure that the different contractors' designs actually tie together and make sense. So we've got probably a good 80% maybe of all of the design that is now in the models, probably Atkins based, because as we've moved from Grit 4 into Grit 5 and we've changed design contractors and we've got more and more detail, that's just the way it's happened to have gone. But we've still got OLE design by Amy, which is in 2D. So we have people like Jay to help us translate that into 3D, because they just don't seem to be geared up to work that way. So rather than sort of labour the point, we've just agreed to free issue a service, but at the same time, we give them the skills and someone to assist them, but it's still their design and it's ultimately their design responsibility. Likewise, everyone knows signalling, we only have either one-dimensional drawings or possibly two-dimensional drawings if we're talking about scheme plans and the like. And we never realistically thought that we would get Siemens to join the BIM party. So again, one of Jay's roles is actually to help them create a signalling model that works and integrates for siting all of their 4-foot equipment and the likes of that. So again, we can integrate their design with everybody else. So it's a kind of path of least resistance from our perspective. And then we have point cloud, which is we'll come on to in a bit in terms of how useful that is to us, the virtual reality stuff, and obviously we are using it for signal sighting, but I'm not really going to labour that one. So Jay's just going to click a little video which is kind of going to give us an overview of how we've built up the federated model. There's no music, I'm sorry. So starting with your survey grid, adding laser survey, point cloud, and then bringing in the existing assets, and this is all stuff that's actually in our model, and then gradually layering in different designs into the model as they become available. So signal sighting, new track, and new OLE. And it's really a case of an evolutionary process. We started off in the beginning with just survey, OS type information, and then topo survey and point cloud. Created a VR wrapper around that, and then as we've got more detailed design, we've just built up the intelligence in the model. So it's gone from being something that was a concept as much as anything else, apart from the topographical data, and now it's a kind of live, actual working BIM model where we're doing engineering design in it, and it's growing in detail more and more each day. Can we go to, I'm probably jumping ahead, so I've done that one. Yeah, we're all right. Yeah, we'll go to, yeah, 5, yeah. Okay. So, just around about September, October just gone, that was, we first hit site, and as usual, contracts a bit late, and we had originally done a staging strategy, which some people in the room are familiar with, but we missed something, and we kind of, we identified it quite late on, and that was, you can see on that picture there from the model, the middle of the bridge arch. In order to get in to demolish the GPO building, we needed to knock out a big chunk of platform 8, which meant shortening it, which meant we'd committed to a deal with Virgin, which is that we would always give them, at all times throughout the project, 2 platforms that could have 11-car Pendolinos. And in the process of planning, we'd lost sight of that a little bit. And then we realised that, well, if we're going to go in, knock a chunk out of platform 8, that only leaves them 1 platform. We'll have to extend platform 9, which is the original plan anyway, but we're not going to have time to do it in its final state. We'll have to do a temporary job. And then we also then discovered that there was a big OLE structure that was in the middle of the platform that was originally programmed to be done later, and we needed to bring that forward and do it earlier, and various things, and that was about, and then contract all of a lot of design and a lot of construction to be done on a essentially 12-week, starting at sort of T-12 and bringing it all in at Christmas. And in case of the platform, we invented a stage 0 because we already had stage 1, which was just bringing a temporary platform into use. So where we found obviously the model really useful was this particular area around the signal box is massively busy. It's just full of everyone's different assets, and it all needs to be coordinated. We've got OLE going up there, we've got signalling in there, we've got lots of telecoms, civils, everything. So we did, in addition to this, we have got a two-dimensional GA, because no matter what you think about 3D, sometimes you just can't do without 2D drawings. They're easy to work to. People need them. You put notes on them, which you can't necessarily do in this format. But where the model really comes in useful when you're doing sort of IDCs is it helps to flag up problems. People see clashes more easily. It's more visual, so we find that a mix of drawings and model at the same time in the same session tends to give the best value. But the other thing was we had to get that particular OLE structure, which is fixed to the bridge there. We had to get the civils, the OLE design, procurement, construction, everything done in a sort of 12-week period from starting a contract with T-12. And in the end, we didn't have enough time to do what the OLE contractor would have really liked, which was get our civils interfaces in place, do some as-built checks, make sure they could the steel work has been cut to the right length, etc., and then order it and go through that process. There wasn't time for that, so we had to just rely on the design. We just had to design it right, and have to order it off the design, and it had to be to the millimetre, and it had to go in. And we did that because we had the point cloud survey, and people are a little bit sceptical about, well, how good is it, or how accurate was it, and could you do that? But we did, and we used the point cloud to accurately position the bracket, which the OLE is sitting on, in space. In fact, it was kind of fundamental because the original design was done on topo, and actually when we went into point cloud and did the work properly, we had to increase the length of the OLE boom, which was another thing. And we managed to do it. It was a little bit kind of fingers crossed, but they came out at Christmas and they dropped the boom on, and it all fit perfectly, and it was fine. And we wouldn't have been able to do that if we hadn't sort of at least gone down the road of this type of process. We'd have been a bit stuck. So it is. So what I was just saying there is it does work, and actually that's generated a bit of confidence. We've got another boom hopefully going in this weekend, and that we'll regard that, if it works for that as well, because actually that one was supposed to go in at Christmas, and for various reasons to do with not being able to drill holes in walls very easily, it didn't quite, but it had nothing to do with walls falling down more recently either. So that's nothing to do with us. We're not guilty. That for us will then prove the concept, if necessary, because of where the program is. I could see us possibly procuring off design once it's been AFC'd in the point cloud model, and being willing to live with the fact that when it turns up and we put it on, it will fit. So it's good from that perspective, from a program perspective. Yeah, not to mention the fact that Virgin wouldn't have been very happy if we hadn't done what we said we were going to do. So even though it wasn't a massive stage at Christmas, it was a bit of a reputation thing to get the project off to a good start. Should we move on? How am I for time? Any idea? I'm out of time? Really? Already? Oh.
Delayed start.
Oh, was it delayed? Okay, very long. Okay, well, you know what? I'll just quickly go through this. So, one of the things we committed to, which is a bit unusual on the project, is we call it safe access strategy. So all of your traditional signalling, E&P, telecoms, kit, and everything else that would obviously normally be down trackside is not. It's up roadside. So we've had to find various locations along the route where that's suitable, and what that's led to is kind of things like cable risers and various challenges about how we, although it's great, you can get there without being got by a train. Maybe there are other risks associated with being got by other people, but in general, it's obviously far better. And this, what we're showing there, that we're also putting an access point in midway in the job. So that is an REB compound with all the control equipment in, and that is the design for our access point, which allows them to get a bit quicker to where the new junction's going in. So we've got 5 REB sites that are at that street level, and that's involved in some cases planning, consents, listed building, application, and even a mural in the Queen. And if I run out of time, I can't even show the photos of the Queen.
There's always time for the photo of the Queen.
There's always time for a photo of the Queen. Or have you got the audience? Okay, so this is one of the sites, very briefly, St Andrew's Gardens. That's the existing mural, and in front of that is going in REB.
Sorry, I think we've got quite
Right, go. Go.
Maybe you can, if some of the questions come out.
Yes, okay.
I'm sure he's happy.
Did I really take that long? There's the Queen. It's just yeah.